And with excitement, allow me to introduce to you today's guest. She is Amanda Robinson, the digital gal. Amanda, are you feeling unstoppable today?
Always, every day. That's how I got here.
Yes. So today we're going to be talking about Facebook advertising tools that you should be using. But first, let's get that motivational, inspirational ball rolling with a success quote or mantra. What do you got for us?
Okay, I'm gonna geek out really hard here because I do Facebook ads for a living, so it's gonna be skewed on the Facebook ad side.
Do it.
You can have the best ad in the world. It could be absolutely perfect, but if you serve it to the wrong people, nobody cares. You can have a mediocre ad, but if you serve that in front of the right people, you're going to make sales. What's
Yes,
that?
I love that. And it's something that like I feel like the society in general is just focused on reach lately, and not so much focused on quality or impact or depth or just finding the right audience. And I feel like there's a shift happening right now. Am I safe in saying that where people aren't really focusing on how many people they feed into the bucket, but they're just focusing on the quality of the relationships they have?
I think the systems that they have to use to reach people can be overcomplicated. Facebook, for example, has a very overcomplicated system. So when you're just starting out, you don't really know how to dial it into quality. You're just trying to fumble your way through all the system glitches and issues, and because of that, they usually don't get further. Than you get hung up on something and you don't take it any further, and then because of that, your quality suffers, and then you throw your hands up and say, "This doesn't work for me. It doesn't work for my business." Meanwhile, your competitors are dancing circles around you.
And this is, I don't know if this is a reasonable fear to have or concern to have, but it's something that just like kind of dances around in the back of my head. And it's just I feel like it feels like in a while we're going towards kind of like what I was explaining before, where it was all about how many people can you get? How many people can you have following you? And we put so much time and energy into getting followers and creating this presence. And it takes a lot of work to do that well, to get that kind of following, to put out that kind of content. And I can't help but think to myself, like, if you're, because I know how much work takes, and you do too. Um, but when we put that much energy in just to making noise to get followers or whatever, are we missing out on the people that are literally right in front of us? You know,
Yes.
our employees, our customers. Like, how can you do both?
You
Like,
you
where do you
don't
fall on that
you
spectrum?
don't need to do both, and so many business owners are focused just on the vanity metrics, on the likes, on the followers, on the reach, but it really doesn't necessarily matter how many people you're reaching, the quality of who you're reaching. And again, that kind of goes back to that first mantra about the ads. You get those ads in front of the right people. So your job is to find the right people, and the content is that hook and lure that brings the right people into you and repels the wrong people away from you in your business. So you're not needlessly spending ad dollars because it runs on an algorithm. So we're playing an algorithm game, and if you're skewing your algorithm, if you're skewing your assets with a whole bunch of people who are not relevant to your business, then it's going to cost you more in the long run and be a harder battle for you to win.
I love this. You're whispering sweet nothings into my ear right now. It's the kind of stuff I like to hear. So, real quick, I do like today we're going to be talking about Facebook advertising tools that you should be using, and we have broken this down into creating ads, audience targeting, budgeting strategy, reports, and optimizing. But before we get into those bullets that you share with us, the key things we're going to be discussing, I want to get an idea of who you are, and why we should be listening to you. What makes you an authority on the subject?
Perfect. So I eat, breathe, and sleep Facebook advertising. So I am Amanda Robinson. I am the digital gal, and I have been doing Facebook advertising since it first came on scene, and I've grown with the platform over the years. So as Facebook keeps, I call it like a Frankenstein effect, as they keep bolting on new features onto the whole base, and things are conflicting and not necessarily talking well to each other. I've grown with the platform and been working with different business owners over the years to troubleshoot every little nook and cranny of every little issue that pops up. And I've learned to an intimate level how the inner workings of the Facebook ad system works, what works for small business, local business, and what doesn't work. I'm also the co author of The Ultimate Guide to Social Media Marketing, and I am an international speaker. I don't like talking about myself very much. I just like doing the work. I also run my Swift Kick in the Ads membership,
Mm.
and I work with individual clients. So I get the pleasure and benefit of helping an entire range of different types of businesses, and I my troubleshooting game is on point.
Awesome. So happy to have you here. So let's just get right into it. I'm just going to get out of your way. Take us through the subject and the information you want to drop on us.
Perfect. All right. So when it comes to running Facebook ads or doing Facebook advertising as a small business, I break this into 4 loving little compartments. The first one is creating ads using Ads Manager. So weaning yourself off of that boost post button and diving into the deep end, understanding the technical back end of how to use Ads Manager and learning what all of the little options, ins and outs are. So by creating ads using Ads Manager, you are taking more control of driving the success of those ads instead of just handing your budget blindly over to Facebook and saying, okay, you go do it for me because I don't really know what I'm doing. When you're boosting a post, it's okay to boost a post if you're starting. It's all right. But if you're starting to spend more than 150, 200, getting up to 500 a month with just clicking that boost post button, it's time to jack up that strategy, get off a boosting post, learn how to use Facebook's Ads Manager. And this works for both Facebook ads and Instagram ads. That's how you run ads on both, and starting to up the quality and the optimization of what you're actually doing and take back control. So that's step 1, is learning how to create those ads using Ads Manager. And it changes frequently. Literally, Facebook changes its mind more than a teenage girl. So by staying current with the platform and learning how to be agile with it, it's going to bring you more success as a business owner. So that's step 1. Step 2, audiences and targeting. So when it comes to targeting, especially if you're a local business like a restaurant, you really can't do all of the fancy targeting and use all the tips and tricks that the gurus are saying when it comes to how to target and reach your audiences by using all these complex different options. You're kind of
Why are we limited?
you're landlocked. People are going to drive to your restaurant or they're going to walk to your restaurant. So by using all of these fancy options, say if you keep adding on a whole bunch of demographic targeting or a whole bunch of interests and behavior targeting, really if you're just working in a 25-mile radius and that's it, that's the furthest people are going to drive to your location, and then chuck a bridge or a barrier or a river in between where there's always traffic and people aren't coming across. Your geography. You're locked by geography. So if you take that geography and you have an audience size of say 100,000 people in that area, and then you try to get really fancy about it and add in all of these different parameters that people are telling you to, before you know it, your audience size has been whittled down to 2,500. And of that 2,500, well, maybe only 500 are actually active that week on Facebook that you're running your ads, and you're competing against all of these other advertisers also competing for that exact same audience attention span, and you may not even show up or be eligible to show up in the newsfeed. So it's complex, but it doesn't have to be that complicated. If you're a local business, you need to simplify it. But understanding your audience, understanding how to target your audience and what's relevant is going to make a huge difference for you on your budget.
Awesome. So, are you planning on going through the other 2 things briefly, like an overview before?
Sure.
I'll ask you
Yeah.
a bunch of questions.
Yeah, I'll go quick overview on the other 2 and then dig in and ask me everything.
Sounds
So
good.
then step 3, budget and strategy. So by having a strategy that actually matches your budget is going to be huge. When people say, how much do I need to spend on Facebook ads? I'm like, I could sit here and tell you, spend $2,000 a month and we can get a nice robust strategy in behind it. But if you only have 500 a month to spend, we're not going to spread you thin across this robust strategy. It doesn't make sense. So it's managing those expectations of what you can achieve with your ads and knowing that on a 500 a month budget, maybe that 500 a month isn't going to be getting me, a customer in the door and sales on the spot. Maybe it's doing the heavy lifting of reaching and driving awareness, and the rest of my marketing can take over. So it's managing expectations with your budget, matching it to a strategy. And then last but not least, the part that gets most neglected by business owners, reporting and optimizing. So answering that huge question of, how do I know my Facebook ads are actually working? And they look at a report, they see one number of results and they go, oh, I got that many clicks. What does that mean? And they don't dig in any further. But if you actually peel back the layers and see and start putting context behind the results, you can start to see, oh, wow, I got a whole bunch of clicks, but they were heavy delivering in this placement where a bunch of people are accidentally clicking because they're trying to click through on an app where they're being shown an ad and it's a false click. So once you start to understand the reporting and understand what the numbers mean, you can optimize your ads even better, reach the right people, and get your ads actually working for you.
I love it. Great overview. So let's get right into creating ads using Facebook Ad Manager. Where do we even find that? Where does this live in Facebook?
Okay, I'm gonna give you the heads up now. There's a lot going on behind the scenes with Facebook as when it comes to the business side of things. There's lots of different nooks and crannies. You've got Ads Manager, you have Business Manager, you have Business Suite, you have Audiences, you have all sorts of different places. You have Commerce Manager. There's so many places you can get lost in Facebook, but what you're looking for is Ads Manager. You can access it through all sorts of different ways in the back end of Facebook. Best way I'd suggest is go to business.facebook.com and then navigate through your menu screens that way to get into Ads Manager. So Ads Manager is the way I like to break this up is that people confuse the terms Business Manager and Ads Manager all the time. Perfectly makes sense because they're both called a manager. They do totally different things. Business Manager is, think of it like your home security system. It's the gatekeeper that gives access control to the different rooms. So that's what your Business Manager is. Your Ads Manager is kind of like Santa's workshop. That's where, the elves go and actually build the ads. That's where you go in and you get to tinker with all the different settings, and that's where you get to build your ads and do all the magic. So Ads Manager is ultimately where you want to be.
Okay. So when we're creating these ads using the ads manager, what are some of the key mistakes, key things that people miss that we should know about? Like, get into some of the
Yeah.
there.
So to preface this, Ads Manager, one of the big differences that I really like when you're migrating from Boosting Post and getting into Ads Manager, the very first thing you're going to be doing is creating a campaign, and they're going to ask you for your objective. So the objective is, what's the ultimate goal of this campaign? What do you want it to achieve? And you can set the goal of that campaign to be things such as, I want more engagement. That's likes, clicks, comments, shares. You could say, I want more traffic to my website. So that's people, you want link clicks or landing page views, people clicking off to go to your website. Or you want video views. You want lots of people to watch 15 seconds or more of the video that you're putting out there. There are different objectives that you can choose from. And when you start creating ads using Ads Manager, you have a whole myriad of objectives to choose from. You have so many more choices compared to boosting a post, where they kind of streamline it down to, I think, 3 or 4 choices that they're kind of choosing for you, depending on what type of post you're trying to boost. So Facebook is taking a lot of control and streamlining it and taking a lot of choices away from you on the boosted post side, but you have so many more choices on the Ads Manager side. Now, where a lot of business owners do fall into a little trap when they're first starting out, they all want conversions. They all want purchases. So they set up their ad saying, all right, I want to get a purchase. I want to get purchases, and I'm going to run a $500 ad to a conversions objective and optimize it for purchases. Well, what ends up happening there is, if you can't get 50 of those conversions that you're asking for within a 7-day period of time, Facebook can't optimize it properly for you. So you're kind of spending money on a more expensive objective, versus if you had just backed it down to a less expensive objective and went for a traffic, you just want clicks to your website. It's generally a little less expensive. And if you're not able to achieve those 50 purchases in a week, then a traffic objective might be a little more appropriate. So these are the types of little things that I teach you in the 4-week Facebook Ads Bootcamp that I run generally every other month. It's part of the Swift Kick in the Ads membership. So it's learning the back end of Ads Manager and learning what all those different things and choices and options mean, and not getting overwhelmed by it, but navigating it one step at a time. So learning one piece at a time, getting used to it, and then starting to move on to the next.
Okay, so in regards to creating ads, the first bullet that you gave me today, are there anything or any other elements regarding the subject that you want to cover before I start asking my questions?
No, you can just ask away.
Okay.
There's too much. So just, we can go down any rabbit hole we want.
So when it comes to, say, purchases, for example, everybody wants to use Facebook ads for more purchases, but you need a minimum of 50 purchases for Facebook to optimize. Give me an example of why a restaurant would be creating ads for the objective of purchases. Or is there another example that's more closely related to the restaurant industry, that's like one of these like little secrets that you just dropped on us that you see come up more often when it comes to the restaurant and food and beverage industry?
Well, not necessarily the food and beverage industry, but talking more about small and local business. Um, so this kind of dovetails into audiences and targeting. There's warm audiences and cold audiences. So people who are familiar with you, that's a warm audience, and people who have no clue who you are, that's a cold audience. So when you're doing your advertising, you want to be able to, you don't have to go for huge objectives like purchases using conversions. You can do things like do an objective that's asking for engagement or video views. So all you want people to do is click a like or react to the video or watch the video, for example. And by running ads to that, what you're doing in the back end is you're growing an audience of people who have taken that action. And then you can retarget those people because they took that action. So the retargeting power of Facebook is where the real magic happens. But first, you need to reach that cold audience of your ideal people with your first round of Facebook ads. So you're reaching a cold audience. And then after those people have engaged with the page or engaged with your Instagram or watched 15 seconds or more of that video, or even 3 seconds or more of that video, you can create audiences based on that criteria to retarget those people with further advertising. And that's where the real magic and power comes in for small and local businesses, is to make sure that you're staying present, top of mind, and getting back out in front of the people who you know are your people. So instead of constantly chasing the unicorn of cold audiences and trying to just wave a giant flag of attention span, like, look at me, stop it. Use the cold audience targeting. So you're kind of your geographic targeting, your location, your landlocked targeting, to make sure that you're trying to attract new people who haven't seen you before, but then use the power of retargeting to keep getting back out in front of the warm audiences of people who already know you. And you can do that with cheap and cheerful objectives like engagement or video views to build those audiences. So focus on building those audiences, more on building the audiences and getting a high quality of people in that audience versus chasing down new people.
Okay, so make sure I understood the first goal. When you're creating these ads, you're thinking of audience targeting. The first thing you need to be thinking of is just making that first impression. You're going for cold leads, and when you're doing the cold leads, you want to focus on the objective is video views, or you just want to be seen first. And then once you put out, like, how much content do you think we should put out before we have made enough impressions to start switching towards, okay, now I've made a few connections, now I want to do the retargeting?
You're going to notice it in it's going to be different for every single business. But when you start running ads for your retargeting audiences, trying to reach those warm audiences, people getting back out in front of them over and over and over again, one of the indicators that it's too soon or you need to grow your audience size even more is when you start running ads on, say you have $100 that you want to spend on a campaign and you're running it to your warm audience of people, but your ads are getting shown in front of the same people over and over and over again, and the same 1,000 people are getting 4,000 impressions. What that means is you have a frequency of hitting the same people at a frequency of 4 times each, and that can start to climb really high. So if you start repeating that same ad in front of the same people over and over and over, you can exhaust your audiences and your ad costs will start to go up. So by paying attention to the reporting, you'll be able to notice, okay, maybe it was too soon for me to start retargeting these people. I'll give you an example. So not a restaurant example, but here I'm in Victoria, British Columbia, and especially throughout the pandemic, the whale watching tours have been targeting local residents instead of targeting tourists because they still need to keep business rolling. But here in Victoria, there's a population size that is relatively small. And so when they're running their ads, they only have a certain population size to work with. And that's going to be the same for the food and beverage industry. You only have a certain population surrounding your actual physical location. And so what was happening is they were serving the same ads over and over and over. I must have seen the same breaching blue whale image about 30 times across the course of several months. And that's okay. If you only have one audience size to work with, I get it. But you can still take other tactics like serve me an orca or give me a seal, like change it up, just change it up. So it's okay if you have to hit the same people over and over and over again, but you need to get a little more creative with your advertising. So when it comes to how soon or how do I know if I have a big enough audience size to retarget, you're going to want to understand how those reports work to be able to watch for those little indicators of if you're exhausting your audience or if you're not. And then there are different courses that you could take of action to mitigate that.
Okay, so maybe I'll hold off and pulling back the layers on that until we get to reports and optimizing. Anything else regarding audience targeting that you haven't hit on that you want to bring to the conversation now?
Audience targeting, just focus it in two different compartments, your cold audiences and your warm audiences, and don't treat them the same. So don't treat a cold audience like a lead. They're not your leads yet. They're just people that you need to get the attention of. Your warm audiences, you want to turn them into leads.
Okay, so
So you
get into how you would treat a warm. I think you kind of explained well with the cold audience. You're just looking to, like, get their attention, like to
exactly.
pull like to get their eyes and to get their likes. But how does the conversation change once you've captured them and now they're a warm audience? Like, how does the tone change? How does the conversation change?
I would my ask would change. So the way that I would kind of roll it out, depending on how much budget you have and how much you have to work with, is a cold audience. My initial goal is just to get a reaction out of them, and you can do that by being funny, by being emotional, by being scroll stopping. So
Yeah,
those are ways that you can just hook that attention
shock and awe.
span. Exactly. That's all you want. Grab that attention span. And then once you've got that attention span, every action we're asking people of costs us more money. So if we're asking for a like or a comment, those are very low key touch points. It keeps people on Facebook's platform or Instagram's platform. So it doesn't cost us very much. But the next stage would be, okay, well, they've interacted with us. Now let's see if we can get them over to our website. Let's give them a reason to go check us out. So you can run ads to try and entice them to get to the website, giving them some reason to click over, whether it's a blog, whether it's an article, whether it's, check out our latest specials this week, something along those lines, get them to the website. Once they've hit your website, you will have your Facebook tracking pixel installed on your website. If you don't stop, drop, and roll, go do that right now. And then once they've been to your website, you have a website visitors audience. You can retarget your website visitors. So step one, get attention. Step two, let's try to get them to your website. Step three, now let's give them an offer or a reason to become a customer. So if you can focus on cold audiences or just at that step one level, and then warm audiences are all the rest of the way. So you can incrementally get them to take additional action. So if you're trying to get people to click off of Facebook and go to your website, your costs are going to increase a little bit. If you want to use a lead form on Facebook and get their phone number, their email, their information, it's going to cost you a little bit more. If you want them to enter a messenger conversation, and say if you have a messenger marketing chatbot, which I love, by the way, for restaurants, if you have a chatbot connected, it's going to cost you more money because those interactions Facebook knows are very valuable to you as a business owner. And if you're trying to ultimately get a purchase, it's going to cost you even more money. So depending on how much budget you have, not all businesses can do all of those stages effectively. So you might need to just back your expectations down, just focus on one compartment of that and perfect that one compartment and then start branching out and expanding.
The typical budget for a single unit operator restaurant, would you say?
I would say that you should be spending around $500 a month on your Facebook ads. And if that makes you go, as in, oh, that's kind of a lot, I'm not really willing to spend that. Think about it this way. If you boost a post here or there for $25 or $50, if you're boosting a post a week for $50, then you're already spending $200 a month. So it does add up. And if you start advertising more consistently, you can grow those audiences, you can get back out in front of the same people over and over, and you can start turning that attention span into customers on an ongoing long-term basis. So I don't want you to be looking at your ads as in, flip the switch on, ads are on, special is on, and then a week later flip the switch off, special is off. Did it work or did it not?
So
You
it's
should
consistent.
you should really be looking and focusing on your ads as a long-term game of growing that attention span, growing momentum with it, and keeping that momentum rolling constantly.
Okay, so I'm gonna regurgitate. And this is probably the worst way to say read back what I've learned, but whatever. Um, so the big two things I've pulled. One, separate into two separate audiences. You have your engaged cold. You have your cold audience and your warm audience. So you treat those two audiences separately. The cold audience, you want to focus on just getting their attention, and you do that best by being funny, being emotional, shock and awe. Just get their attention, and then once you've captured them, you can retarget them. And and they become warm. And then with the warm, you want to focus on calls to action. Offer them a buy one get one, maybe offer to buy them a free birthday meal, right? And when you're having these calls to action, is there some other way to be sneaky or effective, where like you're getting them to fill out some fields, where you're getting their name and their email? Like where do we start to tie in like that data collection when it comes to communicating with these warm audiences?
It's going to be different for every single business, every single industry. I can see that we've got Brandon in the
Yeah,
comments saying we
we're
spend $3K a month on marketing.
damn.
And then when he buys Facebook ads, his budget's usually 500 a campaign. So it really is going to be dictated on how much budget you do have to work with and how your particular audience is responding. So if you're based in New York and you're competing for restaurant attention span, your ad cost, you're going to burn through that 500 pretty darn quickly. But if you're in like rural Nebraska, and you're one of the only one of the only restaurants within a 50-mile radius, then you can probably stretch that 500 so much further and get to the point where you can ask for leads, get people to download a coupon offer and get that 2-for-1, come in for appetizers. You have a lot more wiggle room in play. So it is going to be just a sensitive balance between how much budget you have versus how the audience population you're working with, and how well people are responding at those different stages of converting from a warm audience or a cold audience into warm. And then from there, how easily and how low cost it is for you to get them onto your website.
Okay.
And then from there, you can get more creative. You can run offers. You can get them into a chat bot. You can have them fill out a lead form. You can get a lot more creative. But that's just walk before you run. So instead of going from 0 to, all right, I want leads, filling out the lead form so we can follow up with them tomorrow, it's going to be and to put this in perspective, anytime you're trying to get information from somebody, such as an email or phone number, probably ballpark about $1 per lead on the low end. If you're getting less than that, then you've got a really good thing going on, and run with it. But $1 a lead is, relatively acceptable. So if you were spending $500 on a lead ad and you're getting 500 leads, then that makes sense. But if you're trying to go to a cold audience who doesn't know you with that $500 to get leads, you're probably going to end up with many fewer leads, and your ad costs are going to be so much more expensive.
Got it. Okay. So you did mention geo tracking or pixels. Stop, drop, and roll.
Stop what you're doing right now. If your pixel is not on your website, we cannot be friends.
Okay.
We can't.
So I'm not going to pull back the layers on that, but real quick, give my audience a call to action where they can go to learn more about that.
What you're going to do is you're going to go into the back end, whether you're going to go to business.facebook.com into your own business settings. You're going to look for Events Manager. And in Events Manager, you're going to find your pixel. And that's where you're going to take that tiny little snippet of code and you're going to install that onto your website. Facebook has a whole walkthrough, step-by-step guided walkthrough on how to do that when you're doing it.
With me, is that video public? Can you share that video with me so I can link to it in the show notes?
Oh, actually, yes, I can. I actually have a video on how to set up your pixel. So I'll send that over after.
That will be in the show notes. And this is, I believe, going to be Restaurant Unstoppable episode 787. So if you guys want to go find that, that's where you'll find it. Okay.
So budgets. We've been talking a lot about your warm audiences, cold audiences. We've been talking about not treating them the same. And we've been talking about how for every single business, how do we know how much to spend? How do we know when to start retargeting? That's going to be different for every single business. So to understand that, we need to have a strategy in behind it. We need to manage those expectations. So when I'm talking about strategy, we'll talk strategy first, budget second. Strategy first. So you're managing your expectations. And when it comes to managing those expectations, for example, we need to have measurable results. Well, most people think of a measurable result of how many people came in the door and purchased a meal. That's a measurable result that you hope your ads would result in. But when you're first starting out your advertising, or if you don't have a good foundation of this already, your first focus should be, how do we get people to engage with our business? Engagement should be the first measurable metric that you're looking for. And that should be the first strategy, the first thing that you're focusing on. Just get attention span, get people to engage with your business. And the way you do that, you're doing your cold audience targeting. You're using tactics such as, like we mentioned, trying to get people to laugh, to have an emotional response. You're either using storytelling, you're using shock and awe, scroll stopping, something to capture attention span. And if that's where you're at, that's the portion of your strategy that you should be focusing on. And when you have that nailed down, when that's working for you, then we expand your strategy into, okay, now how can we target our warmer audiences? And we start looking at retargeting your video viewers, your engage with page, looking at your website visitors, looking at your email list. So there's all sorts of different ways that we can retarget people, so we can focus on those audience sizes. How big is that audience size? Do we need to put more work into growing our email list? All right, let's do campaigns to focus on that. From a strategy perspective, do we need to put more focus into getting more video viewers? Because we've been doing all this work over here getting people to our website, but we have no videos on our page, nobody's watching. And that happens to be a very cheap and cheerful, wonderful tactic to start reaching warm audiences and retargeting, is with video, the power of video.
When you say manage expectations, what I think how that interprets in my mind is, if you're new to Facebook marketing, if you're a new business, you got to feed the funnel first.
Yes.
So
Yes.
you can't expect, you haven't made any impressions, you haven't captured any data, you don't have
Yeah.
anything, you don't have a list, you don't have pixels, you don't have followers, you need to get out there and make some noise, bump up against a few people. And the best ways
Yeah.
to bump up are by um, having them engage with your posts, by having them go to your website, and tagging them with a pixel, and having them give them your email address. What are the other things I'm missing as far as different ways to bump up?
So you're going in the right direction. But so when it comes to businesses, even when you were saying, if you're just starting out and don't have all of this data, there are businesses, the business isn't just starting out. The business might have lots of emails and customers, and you might have a ton of data off of Facebook. So your goal, even though you might think you have all of this already locked down, you don't have any of it related to your ad account, related to your pixel, related to you as an advertiser, related to your business on Facebook. None of it's related yet. So goal one, we need to get the people who already love you engaging with you. So as far as your audiences on Facebook are concerned, if you haven't been doing all that work, those people are technically still a cold audience until they click like on one of your posts. So that's, and a lot of people are skipping over that step and just going straight to, okay, well, now I'm going to start advertising on Facebook and I'm going to run an ad to get purchases. And they already know I've got raving fans out there. But based on the constraints of Facebook's advertising system, Facebook might be heavy delivering your ads over to people that don't even care about you yet. So you have to learn how, I don't want to say manipulate the system. You have to learn how to work within the constraints of the system to reach the right people first. And once you've learned how to reach the right people, then you can start growing the audience sizes. And once you're growing audience sizes, then you start going in for the kill. That sounds terrible. You can start going in for the ask.
Yeah. So zoom up to 30,000 feet real quick.
Okay.
Touch on the elements under budget strategy that you want to present before I start making you go down these little rabbit holes.
Budget and strategy, the ultimate, like the overarching takeaway out of that is you have to have a realistic strategy to match up to the budget that you have to work with. So if you have a budget of $200 a month to spend, you're not going to be doing your cold audience targeting, warm audience targeting, then putting out offers and doing all of these fancy things and testing different audiences. You're not going to be doing any of that. Your goal is just going to be get attention span. That's
Cold
it,
audience, cold,
pretty much.
cold audience targeting. Okay, cool. So, okay. So now we've been bumping up against a bunch of people. So I'm like on my fifth cup of coffee. We've been bumping up against a
First.
bunch of people, and we have these relations on social media. Over time, how does our strategy change as we start maybe having more cash flow and having more relations online?
How does that strategy change? So that's a good point. So when it comes to budget and strategy, when I'm first starting out with clients that haven't been advertising a lot, the budget is really heavy loaded on that cold audience side of things, like really, really heavy loaded. And then we just kind of have a trickle on the warm audiences and then trickle on what I call hot audiences, people who we know are ready to purchase. It's just a trickle. But then over time, your strategy and budget are going to morph and shift. And you don't need to invest as much on the cold audience targeting anymore. You're probably going to have at some point really exhausted your reach of your entire local area until everybody's sick of you. And then your focus is going to be shifting more into really working those warm audiences to get those people who are just watching videos till 3 seconds or more of the video, to really honing in your marketing skills to go, okay, so we're capturing people's attention to 3 seconds and then they're dropping off. How do we become better marketers? How do we capture that attention span longer, get them watching past the 15-second mark? How do we get them to watch 100% of that video and then claim an offer at the end of it? So there are different tactics. So you as an advertiser are going to learn and grow, but you're going to be shifting your budget into those different tactics as you grow.
What are some of
Um,
the tools and resources out there that you know of as far as how to become a better advertiser? Not so much on the Facebook ad side of things, but on the content creation side of things.
so I'm a little bit biased. I'm the co-author of the Ultimate Guide to Social Media Marketing, and it's a full 360-degree look at digital marketing in today's climate. So you'll be able to get a full look at everything that you need, from everything from content creation to SEO to ads to chatbots, all sorts. It'll give you a
That
good
book's
exposure.
available now.
That's available now. Yep, you can
Right.
find that on Amazon.
We'll throw that
Now, when it comes to other recommended tools for content creation, I know I really harp on video. You do need video as part of your strategy. If you're not in the video game already, you need to get started, but it doesn't have to be complicated. You don't have to go and make these full productions. Lots of tools I'm using, invideo.io. That's a tool that's very, very inexpensive. They have tons of templates, and they have probably one of the most robust stock video libraries I've ever seen.
Oh, it's
So
in video, like in video.
invideo.io.
Okay.
You can also use Canva to make animated
You can do
videos.
animations with Canva now. Wow, that's I've been I've been delegating my Canva production, so clearly I haven't been kicking around in there as much as I should be.
So you as an advertiser advertising this podcast, for example, you might have a static image, with the speaker's name and an image, and then the title of the podcast, and you might put that out as a static image. You could go into Canva and you could add animated elements and export that as a video file, and that counts as a video ad, and that counts as video views. So it doesn't have to be complicated, and there are lots of different cheap tools. Another tool I like to use is video pardon me, Video Leap. It's an app, Video Leap by Enlight. So if you search Video Leap, it's paid, but it's not very expensive. But it's a really, really good editor on your mobile phone on the go, and it can do vertical video as well. So there's so many different tools for editing video and using the different resources that you have. It doesn't have to be super complex, but you should also be focusing, like, those are just the sort of the one-offs, the things that you're feeding into it. There's a question here about TikTok videos. You can't be using those on Facebook as your ads. First of all, the algorithm will demote the heck out of it. Second of all, there's too much copyrighted music in it, and they don't translate as well. Most people on Facebook, for example, are watching video. 95% of the videos that are being served out there are being watched without sound. And what ends up happening is when you see your friends dropping TikTok videos on the Facebook feed, you see them like doing all these like funky dances that just look ridiculous because there's no music or context to it. So
What about
videos,
InShot?
pardon me?
InShot?
Yep, InShot is another one. So there's so many. There's so many out there, but where I was going with that is that as much as I'm saying, you can go really low cost and low budget, very easy, use the apps and resources. Uh, you still need to have some pillar content that is high quality enough and represents your brand and your business. So if you are a steak and seafood restaurant and your average, your average ticket price, your average purchase is, $250 of a couple coming in and walking out the door, you're not going to be wanting to do all these really low budget ads all of the time. You need some pillar content. I work with a lot of real estate teams, and yes, we have especially the higher volume ones where we have tons of different properties rolling through. We're not going to do a high budget video for every single property. It's just not reasonable. But for certain properties that are in that like Goldilocks sweet spot, we know that, okay, let's invest $1,000 on a video crew. Let's go and produce a high quality piece of content, and let's put $250 to $500 in ads behind that one piece of content. Because if I can get people to watch past the 15-second mark on that one piece of content, I've built a video view audience that I can retarget with all these budget ads at a lower cost, lower rate, but I've got a captive audience.
I love it. Awesome stuff. I think we have about 8 minutes left to cover reports and optimizing, and I still want to leave some room for Q&A at the end. So can we button the budget and strategy up?
Yep, we are good on that end.
All right, beautiful. Let's get into reports and optimizing. Just real quick, hit all the elements you want to touch on, so I make sure we have room for everything before we have to wrap things up. Go for it.
So I'll keep this one pretty simple, because if you want to dig deeper into this one, I highly recommend checking out the 4-week Facebook Ads Bootcamp, where week 4 we go deep in this. But ultimately, like, let me put it in context for you. I have, if you're listening to this, you can't see my background, you can't see what I look like, but I'm pink, I'm high heels, I'm lipstick, I'm glitter, I'm glam. And that's my brand. But if I do an ad with all the glitz and glam and glitter and put that on Instagram, for example, as an ad, sometimes those ads heavy deliver to a male audience. And I notice that my ads are skewing 95% male. Facebook and Instagram is only delivering it now to a male audience because I'm asking for engagements, and only males are clicking on it and engaging with it. Well, that's going to skew my retargeting audiences over time if I just don't pay attention to that and let it run. And then before I know it, I'm only reaching a male audience. And I personally, as a business owner, do business with an equal 50-50 split when I look at my numbers at the end of the year. So I need to control that and make sure that I'm reaching the right mix of people. So to put that into context, if you are a restaurant owner and you have a youthful vibe to your place, and you attract a younger crowd, if you're doing ads but those ads really look like stock photo images and they're not really they're not resonating with your target audience, and if you go back into your reports and you notice that, all right, the main demographic that this ad is delivering to is 55 plus, well, are those the people that are coming in and doing business with you? So if you're letting the ads run wild and not looking at the reporting, you might be looking at just that one metric of, oh, we got so many link clicks. Woohoo, good for us. And
Right
and
on.
the ad costs are low. But the reality is, yeah, it's the wrong people clicking on the link. And if you're not paying attention or know where to look in your ads manager, and where to peel back the reporting layers, you are going to be wasting your ad dollars again. So that's using those stories kind of frames it in the gist of, you can build great ads, you can have the best intentions with your targeting, you can have a strategy that you're working with, but ultimately if you're not paying attention to the end result, you can't improve it.
Okay, so what about A and B testing? Is that something that you coach your clients to do?
If you have budget for it, if you have it, and the reason I keep, kind of circling around on the lower budget, if you have budget, I know that there's going to be a whole range of businesses in here. Some people are going to be spending, multiple thousands a month in Facebook advertising. Some people are, they've only boosted a $50 post here and there. But if you have a larger budget and you're getting to the point where you're starting to stretch and say, okay, we need to get a little more creative, then A/B testing can really help you dial in on, okay, what imagery is working for us? What headlines are working for us? What calls to action are working for us to get better results? So you can start doing some split testing. When you're new, the one area that you will have to be testing, however, is your audiences. You will want to try and create a few different audiences, test them, see which one works best for you. So I have example is I'm working with a romance novel author, and when we try to target ads to target other interests in other types of authors that are similar, our ad costs are quite high. It's an oversaturated audience. But then if we do our targeting based on people who like crafts and knitting and beadwork and different, it has nothing to do with romance and romance reading, but it's hitting that target demographic in a different way. And we compare those audiences against each other when we first start doing our ads. You can see which one is performing better. And then, okay, I'm going to start putting more of my budget and attention into the audiences that are working best for me. So there's a certain amount of testing. You can do your own testing, or you can use the A/B testing features. If you're using Facebook's A/B testing features, make sure you have enough budget to support the
So
duration
essentially,
of the
you're
test.
doubling your budget because you're running two separate ads at the
Pretty
same cost.
Pretty much. And then so if you can't double your budget, then there's a different way of A/B testing where, for example, maybe this week I run an ad with one audience, and then next week I run an ad with a different audience. Your A/B test is just spanning over a longer period of time instead of running it simultaneously together. And then over time, the more you advertise, the more you look at your results, the more you start to get to the point where you kind of know what's working and what's not, and you can improve slowly. So the more budget you have, the faster you can improve. The less, well, it's just going to be a
So
slower game.
these reports are pretty accessible, from what I understand. You go to Facebook Ads Manager, and there's a tab where you get all these reports. So the lesson here, there is no secret about accessing that information. It's just really stressing to pay attention to that tab. To
And
really,
to learn how to look at your reporting, because there are so many different ways. There's the Facebook Ads Manager, there's Facebook Insights, there's Facebook Analytics. There's a lot of different places you can go and get that information. I also use Agora Pulse. I use that as my social scheduling tool, but they have some really, really robust, awesome, easy to understand reports in there. So I use a whole combination. So don't the bottom line is, it's very easy to get overwhelmed with the reports. So it'll get easier on you as a business owner if you can learn what works best for you and where to look for the numbers that make the most sense for you. And then paying attention to it regularly and asking the deeper questions, not just looking at the one answer of, okay, how many results did I get off of that campaign? It's asking for more context and seeking out more information for context behind it.
okay. And which reports, if you can narrow it down to 3 reports that you like the most, where you're looking for your data, what 3 reports do you think do it for you the most?
Let me give you two. So I would suggest, first of all, just pay attention to your Facebook insights. So right from your page, if you're an admin on a page, you have the option to look at page insights. Pay attention to that. On there, it'll tell you your reach, your impressions, and your video views. That's at the most basic level. Just pay attention to those. The next step up from that is understand how to read the reports in Facebook's Ads Manager. And there isn't really necessarily a dedicated reporting tab. You'll have also, there's tabs for your campaigns, your ad sets, and your ads. It can get a little bit confusing if you've not spent a lot of time in there, but play around in there and there's a columns breakdown, and it has a bunch of different reporting presets to look at all of the data in different ways. So just start toggling around with those presets of your different columns and get familiar with what those are. So for example, the reports for video views, if you have a video campaign, you'll want to use one of those presets for video to be able to see the video metrics. Whereas if you have a campaign for traffic to your website, probably want to use a performance and clicks one and Facebook will just pull the data for you in a different way. You can make your own custom reports. You can go so far off the deep end, but at a basic level, don't be afraid to click around inside Ads Manager to go seeking information.
I love it. All right, we're back and we have some questions from the folks that joined us today. And if you guys are interested in joining all future workshops, live recordings, go ahead and please join the network. That's how you get to be a part of these conversations. Brandon, go ahead. What's your question?
Thanks, Eric. Amanda, great stuff. When running ad campaign or adverts, and negative comments are coming in, negative feedback, that always happens. You got trolls out there, you got just somebody that you pissed off. What's your best use, or what would be the best thing to do with that, in your opinion? I know that's a really loaded question and it's a lot, but for example, sometimes we'll use humor, sometimes we'll be really sincere, or sometimes we'll just delete it. And I know it kind of depends on what it is, but anyway, I'd like to hear your insight on that.
So in your page settings, you can actually you can add filters, different words that you want to filter off of your page altogether. So by default, I think there's like a profanity filter that's usually set to about medium, but you can actually go in and take certain words. If you know there are certain negative words or any type of abusive words or or insults that are being used, you can actually go and add those to your filter. Just add those words in, and then anyone who tries to use those words, those comments will not even be posted. So that's one step. If it is a recurring problem, that's one way that you can try to curb it. You can hide the comment, so you don't even have to engage or respond to that person. You can just hide the comment. That's another way of doing it. Or take the road of trying to respond as best you can, either like you mentioned with humor or lighthearted or sincerity, because a lot of people are going to see that, the trolls are out there. They're going to happen. It is important for other people to see how well the business responds to it without getting your feathers ruffled. But it's unfortunately, I don't want to say it's fully unavoidable, but it's going to happen. So just being ready to monitor those comments as they're coming in. And I know I keep talking about Agora Pulse, and full disclosure, I am an Agora Pulse ambassador. But one of the things I like about using that tool is I can see those negative comments as they come in, and I can respond right on the spot, and you can connect your ads to it. So if you have several different ads running, it's not like you can just go to your news feed and pull up that post and respond right there. You have to go digging to find that notification, and digging to find which ad of the 3 different versions of the ad I have out there did they comment on, and then go and deal with it. So at least with Agora Pulse, I have one inbox, and it's all right there, and I can ban people from the page right from there. So
Brandon, does that answer your question? Do you have a follow-up question? All right, I think he is satisfied. Diva, I'm going to go ahead and unmute your mic, and you can go ahead and ask. Oh,
Hey.
Love it.
Perfect. Okay, so more than a question is curiosity. What would you recommend that we should have in our ads? That some tips that we can add so that way we can catch the attention right away. I know every restaurant is different, every business is different, but what you seeing, maybe not that much text, more images, videos, like
video number 1 for sure. Less text on the images. I know you're allowed to add images on text now. Facebook used to have a 20% text rule. They've now scaled it back. They had a 20% text rule, and then they're like, okay, now you can have text, but just going to charge you more money the more text you have. And now they're saying they've abolished that rule altogether. It's still expensive to run ads with more text, but the more you make it look like an ad, the less people are going to engage with you. So I understand when it is a restaurant, yes, some of it does have to be an ad. That can be more of a direct ask, but you can serve the ads to your warm audience. When you're just trying to circulate those ads for attention span, using images that are like stock photos that are clearly stock photos aren't necessarily the best. Using images that are a little more raw and real, like an image of something like a photo of the actual meal going out the door in the restaurant to the customer. If the more realistic and authentic it can be, the better response that you're going to get. Video content is going to be really important. And if you're creating video content, don't be dropping any logos in the front end of that video. Save that stuff for the end of the video. You only have 3 seconds to capture that attention span to start with, and your goal is to get them to watch past 15 seconds. So make sure that it looks good and it's entertaining and it's scroll stopping in the beginning, and then you've got a little more flexibility after. So try to avoid the more. You can put in a mix of, here's your daily special. It looks more like a poster or text heavy. You can have those sprinkled in, but be serving those to an audience of people that are responding to you versus trying to push things that look like ads on people who have not been to your restaurant before.
Beautiful. Diva, do you have a follow-up question, or did she answer your question fully, or is there another angle that you did not have?
Maybe keywords that you consider.
Keywords. In your industry, you're pretty lucky because you're not dealing with medical or real estate or financial services. You're not really falling in under any of those restricted ad categories. And I guess depending on the nature of your business, just try to avoid any words that could be considered political in nature or controversial, because Facebook runs on AI filters. So it's artificial intelligence that's looking at every single ad, determining if it's approved, if it's not approved, and then where that's going to rank with the algorithm. So there isn't really necessarily a direct formula on words not to use, but if I can give you some words of advice on how to position the ads, ultimately make it about them. It's not about you. So when I look at someone who's running an ad, I skim it. The first thing I do is skim it, and I look for how many times they use the word I, me, us, we, our. And then I spit it back to them and say, okay, let's reposition this so that it's not talking about you as the restaurant and the business and the benefit of you as a business. We're not talking about ourselves. We're not our own cheerleader. We are talking about them. We are giving them the opportunity. We're making this about them. So if you can just kind of reposition it and reposition your calls to action to be very much about them, then it will help you get a higher conversion rate.
All right, we have 2 minutes left. If there's any other questions that popped into your head, give me a head nod or shake your head no if you guys are good to go. If you are good to go, we can say thank you to Amanda. And I do want to say, Diva, I'm headed to Florida in like a week, and I love the sound of that music. You better have a margarita ready for me. I'm coming to visit.
For sure, you're welcome here.
Thank you. Amanda, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today to talk about Facebook marketing ads and best practices. Anything we should know about you, how to connect, any calls to action, things we should know about that you got going on. Now's the time to get it out.
Well, if you want to learn Facebook ads from the ground up and all 4 of those components we talked about today, from creating ads to audiences and targeting, budget and strategy, and reporting and optimizing, I really highly recommend you check out the 4-week Facebook Ads Bootcamp, part of my Swift Kick in the Ads membership. I rerun that bootcamp every other month. So once you're in it for life, and you can retake it as often as you want so you can stay current with how often Facebook changes. You can find all of that over at swiftkickintheads.com. And if you want to find me for any Facebook ads help or consulting, you can find me everywhere around the web at The Digital Gal or thedigitalgal.com.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for your time today. I'll have those links to connect with you in your courses and your book in the show notes. Again, this is restaurantunstoppable.com/787. Head over to restaurantunstoppable.com/787. We'll summarize today's discussion. Again, we'll have everything that is possible to linked to. Again, thank you so much, Amanda. There is no questioning. You are unstoppable.
Thank you so much.
We'll cut it there.